They say gods cannot fear the dark, but there was a night even Odin feared to remember. Before the first rune was spoken, before Yggdrasil carried the weight of the worlds, there was only the void, and in that void something watched. Not with eyes, but with awareness older than time itself. Odin stood before it. The wind did not move, the air did not breathe. The world was still, too still, as if it were waiting for him to understand that this silence was alive. He had seen war, he had seen birth, he had seen death. But this was beyond all of them. This was the space that existed before meaning itself. He had come to Mimir's well, where the waters were said to hold the memory of creation. No reflection waited for him there, only darkness so deep that even his godhood trembled. The well was not a pool, it was an opening, and what it showed was not a vision, but a mirror of truth. The voice from the depths spoke without sound. It told him that wisdom is not learned, it is taken, but only from the one who is willing to lose everything to see. Odin did not argue, he did not question. He understood that the price for true sight is a wound that never closes. He tore the eye from his face. The scream that followed was swallowed by the earth as if the world itself refused to hear it. Blood fell into the well and the water shuddered. Alive, knowing, hungry. When he looked again, half blind and half awake, he saw it. Not light, not revelation, but the terrible expanse between them. He saw that creation was not born from beauty or order, but from an endless conversation between knowing and forgetting. And as his reflection stared back, one eye gone, the other filled with new fire, he realized that to see everything, he first had to go blind. From that night on, Odin would never truly sleep again. Because once you have seen the void keeps watching you back. There comes a moment when even a god must face a silence so deep it devours his own name. Odin had seen the shape of truth in the well of Mimir, but seeing was not enough. He had touched knowledge, and it had touched him back. Now, it whispered. Not in words, but in hunger. The All-Father could no longer rest. His one eye looked upon the worlds, yet everything he saw felt unfinished. There was something missing, something that even gods feared to reach for. To command the runes, to hold the secret of all things, he had to die before he could live again. So Odin did what no god had done. He walked to Yggdrasil, the great ash that holds the 9 realms in its roots and branches. He looked up, knowing that every life, every secret, every world hung upon its limbs. And still he stepped closer. He carried a rope and his spear, Gungnir. Not as weapons, but as witnesses. He whispered no prayer, for this was not a plea to the gods. This was a challenge to himself. The wind moved low and hollow as if the tree already knew what was coming. He cast the rope around its highest branch. He placed the spear in his hand, and without a sound, Odin pierced his own flesh. The spear entered, the rope tightened, and the god who ruled the heavens began to hang. 9 nights. No food, no drink, no comfort. The worlds below trembled. The gods did not intervene, for even they could not understand what he sought. The first night was agony, the second delirium. By the third, the pain had become something else, a voice. It spoke from within his blood, from within the roots of Yggdrasil itself. It told him that wisdom is not given. It is earned through surrender. The more he tried to hold on, the more the tree took from him. His body rotted, yet his awareness sharpened. He felt the pulse of every realm through the bark beneath him. He felt the stars turn in silence. He felt his old self dissolve. And on the 9th night, when there was nothing left to give, when even his breath no longer belonged to him, the tree opened. From the abyss beneath his feet, symbols rose, the runes, shapes that were not made but remembered. Each one burned through his mind like lightning, marking him with truths too ancient for speech. Odin reached out. With trembling hands he caught them. And in that moment, the hanging god became the waking god. He did not fall. He was released. No longer the seeker, no longer the ruler, but something in between, a bridge between death and understanding. He had fed himself to himself, and what rose from that sacrifice was no longer just a god. It was consciousness itself. The knowing that all life must pass through pain to remember what it truly is. He hanged from the tree, but not for death. He hanged to awaken the God that still sleeps inside every soul. They say the gods remember everything. But there is one memory they buried so deep, even the roots of Yggdrasil tremble to hold it. The story of Odin's hanging was never meant to reach mortal ears, because what he became on that tree was something even the gods could not name. When Odin fell from the noose, the world shifted. He did not die, he changed, and the gods who watched from afar did not cheer. They whispered. They saw in him not a savior, but a warning. Odin had looked beyond the veil of their creation. He had seen that the gods themselves were part of a greater design, not makers, but made. Bound by the same laws that shaped men, stars, and shadows. He had broken the order that kept them apart from humankind. And in doing so, he had become something unrecognizable. No longer just a god of wisdom, but a mirror of everything the cosmos tried to forget. The runes he claimed were not meant for divine hands. They were keys, symbols that could awaken any being who dared to look within. And if humans learned what Odin had learned, they would no longer need to kneel. That is why they hid him. They erased the truth of his sacrifice, turning his awakening into a myth, his torment into legend, his revelation into silence. They said he sought power. They said he wanted to rule. But what Odin truly found beneath Yggdrasil was not power. It was origin. The understanding that creation itself is the dream of something greater, something that lives in all who are willing to sacrifice their illusion of control. And that knowledge terrified them. Because if Odin could ascend through suffering, if he could see through the fabric of fate, then so could you. The gods wanted worship. Odin wanted awakening, and that made him dangerous. So they cloaked his truth in fear. They gave him titles, rituals, stories. They made him a distant king instead of a reflection in your own mind. They made sure no one remembered that his greatest act was not ruling the heavens, but transcending them. Even gods fear what he became, because Odin did not just sacrifice himself to himself. He became the memory that cannot die, the whisper that keeps telling the human heart, "You are not beneath the gods. You are what they came from." They call Odin the father of wisdom, but they never tell you what that title costs. Knowledge was not handed to him, it tore through him. When he grasped the runes from the darkness beneath Yggdrasil, they did not sing, they screamed. Each rune burned itself into his flesh, etching lines of meaning that no god could erase. They were not spells, they were mirrors, each one reflecting a fragment of what he had to destroy to see beyond illusion. He saw the pattern of all things, and with it the unbearable truth that wisdom and pain are the same thread, woven differently through every soul that dares to awaken. As he traced the symbols with his bloodied fingers, they revealed not just secrets of the cosmos, but memories buried deep within himself. Every victory, every sacrifice, every face he had forgotten. They stared back from the runes, reminding him that nothing gained is without its echo. The runes whispered what no god wishes to hear. That knowledge is not freedom, it is weight. The more you see, the less you can look away. The more you understand, the less peace you can ever hold. And Odin carried that burden alone. The other gods saw the marks on his body and called them symbols of power. They celebrated him as the one who knew, but they never saw the silence that followed him, a silence heavy enough to bend the air. For in his knowing he had learned the one truth that undoes every god, that the more light one gathers, the deeper the shadow behind it grows. He could command the runes, bend fate, call storms, and whisper to death itself. But every time he did, he felt another piece of himself fall away. And still he did not stop, because to turn away would be to forget what the runes demanded of him. To see is to pay. To understand is to bleed. Every truth demands a wound, and Odin, in his endless hunger for meaning, chose to never let his heal. So he walked between realms, half king, half ghost, his single eye filled not with sight, but with the unending weight of what he could never unsee. For wisdom once taken does not return. It only watches through the one who paid its price. They speak of Odin as if his story ended on the tree. But the truth is, it only began there. Because the hanging god was never meant to stay in the sky. He lives in you. And every time you break, every time you question who you are, he awakens again. Odin's torment was not the pain of flesh. It was the tearing away of everything that once felt certain. The god who had ruled the heavens was forced to face the smallest thing of all, himself. He had seen across worlds, commanded storms, and defied death. Yet in the silence of that ninth night, he realized that the enemy he feared was not chaos. It was the reflection staring back at him through the void. The one that whispered, "You are not whole. You are becoming." Odin's sacrifice was never about gods or worship. It was about truth. He did not hang for power. He hung to understand the darkness he carried. Because the shadow that lives in every being is not evil. It is the mirror of what we refuse to see. And so when he looked into himself, he saw every arrogance, every hunger, every doubt that shaped his divinity. He saw that creation was not made from perfection, but from struggle. The endless battle between what we show and what we hide. That is why his story unsettles you. Because it is not a tale of a distant god. It is your reflection, stripped of illusion. You are not the hero. You are the hanging god. Every time you lose something you thought defined you, every time you are forced to let go of what you believed you were, you hang from your own Yggdrasil. The rope is your fear. The spear is your truth. And the tree is everything that refuses to let you fall until you awaken. Odin's death was not a moment, it was a mirror. He became the symbol of transformation, the reminder that every act of awakening begins with destruction. He learned that to see the divine, you must first face the part of you that is terrified to look. That is why he still hangs. Not above the world, but within it. In the places where you tremble, in the silence that follows your most painful truths. For every time you suffer, question, and rise again, you are living his myth. You are continuing his sacrifice, and until you learn to see the god within your own reflection, Odin will keep hanging, waiting for you to recognize the shadow wearing your face. There is a truth hidden beneath Odin's story, one even the gods could not speak aloud. He did not hang to die. He hung to learn what death truly means. Odin's sacrifice was never about pain. It was about surrender. He gave up not his life, but his certainty. He let go of the illusion that he could control the path of creation. And in doing so, he discovered the secret that every soul must face. To rise, you must die before dying. He wants you to understand that death does not always wear the shape of an ending. Sometimes it is the quiet moment when you let go of what no longer fits. Sometimes it is the silence after you lose everything you thought defined you. It is the empty space that terrifies you, the one that asks, "Who are you?" when there is nothing left to hold. That emptiness is the very thing Odin embraced. It was not despair, it was awakening. For in surrender, he found a vision that no living eye could see. He realized that power is not in command, but in the courage to let the old self collapse. Because the soul cannot be filled until it has been emptied. This is the lesson he left hidden between the lines of myth. That transformation begins only when resistance ends. Every struggle to control, every fear of loss, is the rope that keeps you hanging without awakening. Odin wants you to understand that what you call endings are simply doors you've refused to open. He wants you to embrace the silence that follows loss, for that is where the truth waits. He wants you to stop searching outward for meaning and instead descend inward, into the place where your gods, your doubts, your wounds all meet. Because that is where he found you. Even before you were born, he saw the pattern of your becoming. The moments you would break, the moments you would rise, and the moment you would finally see that every fall was part of your ascent. To rise, you must die before dying. To awaken, you must let yourself unmake. To truly live, you must surrender the version of yourself that clings to certainty. That is what Odin wants you to embrace. Not power, not immortality, but the courage to walk into emptiness and call it transformation. For in the stillness where everything ends, the eye you once sacrificed finally opens, and you see not as a god above, but as the consciousness that was always within. Odin does not ask for worship. He asks for remembrance, not of him, but of yourself. Because the story was never about a god hanging from a tree. It was about you, the one who walks through loss, who endures silence, who bleeds for understanding, and still refuses to turn away. Odin wants you to see that your pain was never punishment. It was initiation. Every wound you carry is a rune carved into your being, a symbol you were meant to read, not regret. He wants you to understand that suffering does not make you broken. It makes you open. Each heartbreak, each failure, each moment you thought you were finished, was the universe carving space for a greater vision. Odin lost his eye to see the truth. You lose pieces of yourself to remember it. He wants you to stop looking at your scars as the end of something. They are the markings of transformation. They are proof that you have touched the edge of yourself and returned with knowledge that cannot be taught. When you look at your reflection, he wants you to look deeper. Past the name, past the story, past the mask. Look not with your eyes, but with what you've lost. Because what you've lost has already seen the truth you've been seeking. Odin's lesson is not comfort, it is clarity. He does not whisper promises of ease. He reminds you that light is born from the breaking of darkness. That creation itself was a sacrifice long before gods or men could speak its name. You are the seeker and the sacrifice. The tree is your life. The rope is your fear. The spear is your truth that will not let you rest until you face it. And when you finally stop running from your reflection, when you can stare into your own emptiness without turning away, you will understand what Odin saw from the tree. That wisdom is not found in answers, but in the courage to face the questions that never end. He wants you to look at yourself not as something waiting to be saved, but as something already divine, stripped bare by the weight of its own becoming. For the eye you think you lost was never taken. It was traded for the sight that can only come through pain, through surrender, through truth. Odin wants you to look at yourself and see what he became, a being who dared to pay the price for understanding. And when you can do that, when you can look into your own darkness and call it awakening, you will no longer need to look for gods, because the God will be looking back through you. If this story made you see yourself through Odin's eye, like, comment, and subscribe for more forgotten truths. Your journey into the old gods has only just begun.